Hello and welcome to the British Football Guy. This week we are talking about Pro Rel and bringing that to the NFL and what it would look like. As a bit of an insight, Pro Rel means promotion and relegation. I actually didn't realize this for a few years, so when everybody was saying Pro Rel, I was like, what? Ben, welcome back.
Same. Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
I also didn't know what it meant for most of my adult life.
Pro Rel, do you know what it is? It's like one of those pharmaceutical commercials where it's like, if you have back pain and acute arthritis, use Pro Rel. Ask your
It's kind
physician
of
today about Pro Rel. And then it says, these
it's
contains
just
may
got
may
Brett
have like
Favre in the
heart
background.
attack. Yeah, exactly. And Brett Favre, you can promote Pro Rel for the NFL. Cool. So
Yes.
why are we talking about this? So Pro Rel or promotion and relegation is so common in Europe in pretty much every professional league, whether it be soccer, um, rugby, cricket, um, ice hockey. They even
It's
have it in
it's
that.
pretty much international as well, right? And I mean, even in where you'd have, I mean, Asia, the way their soccer leagues work is the same, isn't it? Or most of their sports. I don't know
So
about basketball. I know that's really big in Asia, but for at least rugby, soccer, is cricket pro rel?
it is. It is. You've got
Might be
different
one that I don't
counties.
know.
You've got
Hmm.
different counties
Golf
and
is
stuff.
pro rel. Even in the U.S., golf is pro rel.
Oh, it is
You
because
got to
of that
make
with
it
the
up into
tour.
your tour, otherwise you go to a lower tour. Yeah, you go to like down to like the
Ah,
Corn Ferry or like Q School or different things
well, that makes
because it
sense.
makes so much money to stay up in there. Didn't even think about that until now. Wow.
But it's like so you
Okay.
talk about
Anyway, keep going.
Japan and China, and they don't. I think they don't have enough teams to be pro when it comes to soccer.
Ah,
But so we're talking about you have to have a certain number of teams for promotion and relegation. So in England, in our soccer, uh, I guess tiers, we have the Premier League, which is a top one. So like Man United play, Chelsea, Man City. Then you have the Championship. It got rebranded to actually have a bit more prestige and more money into it, which it did, and it has I think something like 80% of all the teams in the championships have at some point been in the top tier, and it's obviously getting more and more. So competitive, like really competitive. Then you have League One and League Two. So you have four professional leagues in soccer, and I think it equates
mm,
to you've got what 48 72 92 professional clubs in the English league. So thinking about England's population is around about 50 million. If you brought in
okay.
Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland with their leagues, you're looking at around about 150 professional teams with a population of 60 million. So 150 teams that are professional. So I'm not saying that this makes cash sense because there are a lot of teams that kind of go or get close to going broke. But 150 teams, and that always stemmed from just localities. A lot of these were pubs and pub teams. So they actually soccer was created, and this is from my understanding, and my dad actually did some research on it when he was at college, is the culture of the working class was they'd work in the mills and then they'd go to the pub and they'd just drink, and then it was a lot of antisocial behavior. So they started doing soccer to get them out of that habit and get them out of the pubs. So people would then go watch the games, and it was for all of these local teams.
Oh,
So it helped up there, but it was actually started by the toffs, the posh, the upper class and the aristocracy. I think that is it called The Beautiful Game or something on Netflix? It's like a cross between Downton's Abbey and um, a
no.
sports movie or a soccer movie. So it actually does go into a little bit of the history about that. But because of that, you had all of these local teams for population. So Burnley is a Premier League team, so kind of similar standing to that of like Tampa Bay. Its population. Uh, Google. Hey Google. What's the population of Burnley? Jesus. I mean, that set off about four different Googles, but 88,000 is the population of Burnley, that wouldn't even fill some of the stadiums in the NFL, and that's for every single individual.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a Premier League team. So that's the thing. You've got all of, and they used to be in a really lower league. Teams go bounce down, they bounce up, and we've talked about that, how it's kind of people have their day, but in the UK, if you mess it up, you could go down a few tiers.
Yep.
So I wanted to talk about, we've spoke on this podcast a lot about why promotion and relegation is actually such a nice thing to have, because we talked if like you're a Jets fan last year or a Jags fan, you're just playing for a draft pick. So what have you got to cheer for? There's nothing, and you can know that probably by you kind of gave us a stat from AWS or powered by AWS that something like if you lose your first 2 games, like 70% of the teams don't make the playoffs.
Yep, something like that.
Which is insane. So you kind of know that it's going to be a shit season, unless which is a conference that you can win 2 games and make the playoffs.
That would have been
the East, NFC East.
The NFC East. That last year, yes, you could have won. Just like I forget what they barely went 500 on the season. Like as far as whether wins and losses.
That was right.
I don't even know who came out of that. Was it the Eagles?
Giants. Oh, Redskins.
Giants.
No. Oh wait, sorry, not Redskins.
Team.
Washington football team.
Heck yeah.
Heck yeah. So look, it kind of again it comes to that. So if you're fighting in a tier, so in the Premier League system in soccer, 3 teams go down, and you will see fans on the final day of the season, if they finish 17th instead of 18th, like with full emotion, crying, storming the pitch because they came 17 out of 20. And again, it doesn't go against America's winning mentality of nobody ties and stuff like that. But it gives everybody to play for something all the way through the season, in addition to having knockout trophies and cups. So I wanted, and that was like a pretty big introduction to why we're doing this. I wanted to do an episode on where we talk about the feasibility of whether you could have promotion and relegation in the US, and specifically in the NFL. And the one starting prerequisite is, do you have enough teams to do this, or enough markets to expand into? And you 100% do. If we've been talking about this 8-team expansion to take the NFL to 40, you could have 2 tiers. Just speaking out loud first, is you could have 2 tiers right there. So that's not going to be a problem. There are enough teams to do it. It's a willingness and just whether the fans would like it. So we're both going to pitch our idea. We haven't spoken to each other about how it would work.
Yeah.
I will say that there will never be a pro-rel system in the NFL. I just don't think they will ever opt for one. So this isn't me believing they're going to do one, but if they were, this is how I would structure it. Did you go first for the Freedom Bowl, or?
Yeah, you go.
I go first for this one. So I didn't write on the whiteboard this time, so you won't hear me kind of go in and out of audio. I wrote it down on paper and quill. So,
paper and quill.
So the way I look at this,
you're not taking no English math stuff, are you?
I've actually been speaking in archaic old English all day at work as well. Takes me back to a simpler time. So to start this off, we're not just going to do this over one season and say, right, you're split into Division 1 and you're split into Division 2. The way that you do this is Pro-Rel would start in 4 years' time. So in the 2025 season would be the first time that there'd be 2 divisions in the NFL. And it's going to take the next 4-year average record into account. So you would rank the team based...
kind of like, so you're putting everybody at 0, essentially.
Yeah.
And like, now you've got to earn your way into what you want. It's kind of like 4 years out. It's kind of like its own little World Cup-ish, or its own little like within the nation tournament. Kind of like it. Okay.
It gives you time to think about it, right? In terms of, okay, where's our squad at right now? What's our cap space? How are we gonna? And so it's coefficients, I think, is like the correct mathematical term. We use it in soccer for seeding. So if it's European tournaments or if it's World Cup tournaments, whoever you beat has a certain weight. So England's like was ranked number 4,
Mm.
and I think Italy was ranked number 9. So if number 9 beat number 4, that adds more points to you and you go up on the rankings. This would purely just be on win percentage. So if you've got like kind of 0.5 and so on. So over the 4-year period, you might think like Kansas City, they probably know for the next 2 years they're going to do really well. The Jags, they probably know this year might be tough. But it should give everybody enough time to get out of their issues. Like if you look at the Jets, I mean, I'm trying to think.
Yeah. I was thinking what it does is it gives an interesting play for the strategy. So, like you're about to say, the Jets, they've got 4 years to turn it around.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever really turns it around in a season, but it creates an interesting story to follow over the next couple of years, rather than like, sorry, Jets fans, if any of you listen, but like rather than, well, I'm just an angry Jets fan, right?
So it's also, I'm thinking with that as, so I've got a few things that I haven't really figured out and probably need a little bit more thought on it. But, you know, we talked about throwing games. You're definitely not going to throw games over the next 4 years if you know that there is going to be a second tier league. So you're going to want to be going for that. So 4 years has taken place and there are 16 teams that go into tier 2. Those 16 teams can't reach the playoffs for the Super Bowl. Only the tier 1 teams can reach the Super Bowl playoffs and the Super Bowl. So I was thinking, do you do East and West and just take coefficients from top 8 in the East stay in and the worst go down, and then you have it play off like that, which I think in principle would be the simplest way to do it. So this is how I'm going to stick it. So you'd have 8 East, 8 West in tier 2 and tier 1. What you're going to find is you'll have some teams on, say, the East or West that go down a division, but they might have actually had a higher win percentage than a team in the West, and they're staying up. So that's where there's probably some issues. But if they know that going into it, they know who they're playing, you know, that's what it's going to be. So you've got 16 teams in the bottom half and 16 teams in the top. So the other considerations is the top one can only play for the Super Bowl. So you play everybody basically in the league or close enough to East and West. You could do it like that. But because the bottom team, tier 2, they can't get to the Super Bowl. So they can qualify for... The top 8 would qualify for a playoff to get into tier 1 at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And then you would have 4 of them that go up. And 4 of them come down.
Would you run it as a point system? Or would you run it as a win as a win? Or are you doing the coefficient the whole way?
Yeah, that's a really good point. So, and this is where I think is you still have to base it East and West. So
yeah.
At the end, like you still need to have 8 in East and West on every level. So you're only competing with, you know, the top 4, 2 teams in each side will go up just to keep that going. You keep it as wins, just a win percentage.
Just wins.
But in the other half, in the top half, so you've got 8 teams going to the Super Bowl, right? The other 8
for the Super Bowl.
Yeah, so they've got the playoffs. The other 8 bottom teams are also in a playoff system, but for going down.
Yeah.
So with that, if you lose,
from going down, yeah.
Rather if you win, you're out of the relegation playoffs. So it's the team that loses stays in this playoffs. And those are the teams that go down. So that's kind of...
That excites me a lot.
So you keep on going. So
I think that would keep the average fan interested, right?
I'd hope so.
It's like a fight to the death, and literally you're dying out of your league. Well, kind of, but reverse. It's interesting. It's not like that. I'd be very interested to watch that over the course of a couple of weeks. That playoff. Like, and that game is right before the Super Bowl playoff game every Sunday or whatever, or maybe it's Saturday versus Sunday. Like, scheduling would be super easy on something like that. Oh, that's very interesting.
But you should be playing out of
I
your
would like
teeth.
just like to watch like. Yeah, you have to like because you don't want to play that next game because your team's going to be that much more tired. You have to worry about that much more prep rather than you can just start your off season. There's absolutely no incentive to not play your absolute tail off if
Right.
you're in that like relegation playoff. You don't. That would be like fight to the death every game, and if you're that team that loses and they barely lose a second time, and you're heading to the third game, you're like, "Fucking, I need to win this one, so we can
Imagine if
be done with it."
imagine if Green Bay knew that they might be sending the Bears down a tier because they
Yeah.
beat them. It would be like such like the fans would I think would go crazy for it. So the only other kind of considerations that I had on this was there's two aspects of it. The first one is expansion teams. So I talk about this 8 more teams. They would come through that bottom tier. So they would start in tier 2. So you'd have 8 more teams that would come into it slowly until the both leagues balance at 20 teams in each tier. To also make it exciting, because the bottom tier teams, they're fighting for promotion, right? But they're not fighting for relegation to go down to a third tier. How can they still be playing tier 1 teams? So we do the Freedom Bowl, kind of what we talked about before, a knockout trophy where you can be picked against any team and you could still win silverware and all the good things that come with it. So theoretically, you could have a tier 2 team against a tier 1 team in the final if they played really well. So it gives them still something to fight for. Silverware is on the table. The final consideration that I had was draft picks and how does that work? And trading draft picks. So automatically, picks 1 to 16 would go to tier 2. So the worst positioned tier 2. So we'd still balance it so you can get out of that league. But you would be able to trade to tier 1 teams. So if you did want to trade your first round pick to somebody in tier 1, you could do that for more picks and stuff. So it still count, but automatically all the 1 to 16 is going to tier 2, 17 to 30. Wait, how many? Is it 32? 32 draft picks. Or is it?
I don't. You mean per round?
Per round.
32 per
Yeah,
round,
32
and
per
then
round.
there's
Yeah.
a million rounds. Yeah.
So that would then go to there. So that's the only piece. And then when it comes to finances, finances would stay the same in terms of NFL's way that they share the money and the revenue. It wouldn't be like a lower fund for that. So ultimately, fans should always have an interest in it. But then you've got 2 trophies, and it kind of takes away those throwing the game away type of, or just nothing to cheer for. I think that's a lot of our podcast is about is how to keep the passion and from a fan's perspective, and it's probably my biggest gripe with the NFL is those type of games. But anyway, that is my pitch to Commissioner Gordon. What have you got?
Well, my pitch involves Commissioner Johnson, The Rock, and bringing the XFL back, or at least in the sense of I probably manage the rules a little bit different since the games were closer together. But what I would want is the XFL being my lower tier, right underneath the NFL, and any NFL team can drop down to the XFL. And because I like the team names, I like the difference, the vibe between it. Like I said before, I liked the XFL a lot. It was very exciting. So I want that back. And even if the rules are a little different, more so it's safer because the XFL, the rules were made to make it better to watch and make it more safe for the players. Happy with that. But wanted to bring the XFL back, maybe expand it a little bit as well. So it's got probably a decent number there. Should be at least 12 to 16 teams. So it's potentially up to half the size of the NFL. And I think what I would have to do is balance it out a little bit still with some of the bottom teams from the NFL. I don't know if I'd make it go over the same course about 4 seasons. I didn't think about the logistics on getting to that balance, but there would have to be a balance. There's a little bit more teams there. I would run mine on point systems for the pro rel side of things, or being in there. I did think about a playoff as well for the tops of each. Obviously, the top for the lower tier gets bumped up. I would say 3 teams. I maybe even 4. Like I'm a big fan of a big chunk of teams moving every year.
Right.
Switch things up, more to play for. I think you could potentially lose some fandom on that as well. But anything to keep the excitement going. I'm going to steal your idea on battle to the death at the bottom of the top league. I think it'd be interesting to think about repercussions, like having a bottom playoff as well in the bottom league. What is the repercussion? Like, why wouldn't you want to finish last? Like, maybe you lose a draft pick. The problem is it obviously doesn't make that team better. You can brainstorm about that in a second.
Yeah, okay.
I think there should be still some reason to not want to be on the bottom of the second league for either one of us, because there's nowhere to go. But I would take that, and that's where I would want to go. I wouldn't want to take everything over a 4-year period, but I'd rather like just do it, rip the Band-Aid off, see where the cards fly, see where the shit NFL teams go versus maybe some of these young kids on the XFL, the unknowns on the XFL, right? And see what plays out. I think what would be interesting is with the XFL, if we could somehow manage this in the NFL, because the XFL teams are all started somewhat of a grassroots train already. A lot of the XFL teams, they got to pick players that were graduating from colleges in their area. Like the Texas team, the Roughnecks, like they were able to pick up some players that weren't drafted in the NFL from specific schools. So like I like the grassroots mentality that was starting to push up as well with. There's one of the reasons I really like the XFL too. And, like you can bring that in there. If that could then carry up through that, and like you've got a tier 1 team, we'll say Texas because I still live here. They're pulling all the kids from Texas. What's that going to do for the fans as well? Like that creates a really cool fan experience. I don't know how you implement it necessarily within the NFL teams is the same way, but like there's a way to do it, or they would figure it out as well. The thing is, Alabama doesn't have no NFL team, so who's going to take Alabama as far as the kids go as well? That's what makes it more fun for the pro rel too. So kids can go and see, like, try to watch their teams that go up. Because one of the other thoughts I had was to do a pro rel, not with the NFL, because it's just so complicated to like make something that's realistic, which is why we put the parentheses at the beginning of this. But a pro rel for college, you could almost do it without change tomorrow.
Oh my god. So why don't we
can table that? But like, it's so right for it, so good. Like, I don't like college football that much. We talked about on the podcast. I had to watch too much as working for my team in Indiana. It is enjoyable to watch in the playoffs. Having a pro rel for college would make it that much more interesting.
So
your team, you see like at Clemson, all of a sudden they get bumped down a tier. It changes the world because BYU got up, right?
Yeah, world peace happens because Clemson goes down.
I'm thinking more along the lines of the basketball teams, but like,
yeah. I hear you.
So like, I think we could spend a while talking about college, because I think the college system already, all you have to do is create the tier system, and it's done.
So let's do an
episode. You've got enough teams
to
do as many leagues as you want.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. Because obviously you've got D1, D2, and so on, and you wouldn't have to change anything. I don't think Commissioner Gordon looks after that. In fact, I think the problem with college football, it is so, decentralized that it has issues of talking together. That's why with COVID, it failed last year because it was so decentralized. Look, I think that's going to be brilliant because we are going to talk more about college football, and it's really not that far around the corner. So let's talk about how, we'll do an episode on college football in terms of how you could change the playoffs, how you could bring pro rel in, teams to watch for, and just like an overview of how we're going to track college football on this podcast. Because I know it's not your favorite, but I've made a decent little bit of money, and it's
Getting better.
helps the Saturdays go along a little nicer.
Yeah.
So I did want. So like, I really like your idea of bringing the XFL in to as a kind of the second tier, and then just seeing how it plays out. And there is a grassroots element which is pretty cool. I think there's probably some more work to flesh that out, but it's kind of like you've got some
Mm-hmm.
teams, you've already got players in there. You throw the UK teams, the expansion teams, into the XFL league as
Yeah.
well, and that gets you to that higher number. But yeah, so for finishing, as a kind of a final thought, you're right. If we are doing pro rel, there has to still be a bottom team at the end of the tier. In English football, I don't think it stops because you do have about no lie here, probably about 30
Oh, you
different
keep
tiers in the
going, yeah.
pyramid. So you could keep and
Yeah.
falling down until it just I've obviously played at some of those lower tiers.
And at that point too, you're talking about people that are playing football as their second job,
Oh, 100%. That's
right?
it
That's not what.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like, it's like so like getting. It doesn't matter if you lose, then you're just like the last team on the Pee Wee, like your last team on the Sunday
Hmm.
list, basically.
So
Um,
I have a
but
few.
if for these NFL ones, if we've only got 2 years,
Yeah. So look, I've got a couple of ideas just straight off the bat. Um, Cone of shame. So for the next season, they all have to wear a cone of shame. It impairs vision
tone, yeah,
and mobility. So cone of shame for the whole of the season. Or you start taking. It's a little bit like what's it? The game Hangman where you had to guess in so many letters. You start taking pieces of body armor off. So it might be knee padding for a season, and then if they keep on
no
finishing
face
bottom,
masks.
it's a helmet until they're just playing um, in
They're gonna
t-shirts.
start finishing bottom because they've all got broken knees and concussions every day.
So that would
They
be
won't
the
finish the season. They're just stuck at the bottom
that would be the gladiatorial way of looking at things. Um,
version. Yeah,
any thoughts?
I think you almost. I mean, I know I brought it up, but you almost might not be able to do anything to them.
Is it
What
just
you might be able
shame?
to do is maybe just say, you know what, you've got one less option to trade. But I think the shame is gonna be as bad as it is because you get things for
Mm-hmm.
winning the leagues. You get things for being on top. What I would say is we don't give the bottom people that are the bottom chunk in the second tiers on either system any advantages
Mm-hmm.
on
Finishing last.
picks. Yeah, you don't get an advantage on pick. You want to finish fifth to last, which makes it the new exciting loser, if you will.
Yeah.
So I'd
Yeah.
be interested to hear what maybe crowd feedback is on that as well, because like if anybody who's listening here, put a comment somewhere, either on the Facebook or we'll get it up on the Reddit area as well. I'd just be interested to see more creative, realistic ideas around that.
Like well, you talked about a coin toss before. That maybe they just don't get the coin toss in X amount of the games. It's just a simple thing because that's just a you know.
Yeah, that's true.
You're right.
But then you're basically rewarding another team.
True.
I
True.
like any idea
So look,
that doesn't give another team benefit and it doesn't change this strategy where we have weird, shitty playoff games that nobody wants to play.
right,
Right?
absolutely,
Because
and
then if
that
you have that weird fifth place spot,
yeah.
could potentially do that.
So look, I like that idea. I think what we'll do, we'll post it on the Reddit channels, and I think we'll do one where we just see, if they had to choose between the two, which way would they go in listening to this as a kind of a poll, and also, yeah, anything in terms of cone of shame. Just a little bit of a heads up. I haven't got. I'm just seeing if The Rock has emailed me back. No, he
Blame
has. He hasn't emailed me back.
usually comes from, yeah.
I did have a few more. Like after we did the British football teams for I guess like the next month or so, we did have new suggestions coming in. So from that, we had the Queen's Beasts, which would be also have the emblem of a corgi, which I kind of like. That's actually really cool. The Queen's Beasts, Old England Patriots, Um, this one was quite clever. BYE, because the next word on the schedule, that's what it would be every time they played in London. The London Bollocks, London
Yeah, that's a lot of one.
Gods, the Colonists. But yeah, there was actually, we had a lot of really good suggestions long after the poll closed. But yeah, nothing with from the Rock, so or Commissioner Gordon in that. So look, in terms of what to look for in this podcast for the next few months, obviously the football season's coming around the corner, so there is going to be episodes on fantasy and also on college football. We're still going to supplement it with kind of what if episodes like this. How would this work? Getting paid to poop episodes, as well as a few drunk episodes as well down the line. So lots to come. We do probably need to talk about the new or the not Madden 21, like doing a review of a game and how
Oh
we would
yeah.
if you had a competing game against Madden, what would that look like? So I know we still got that on the list, but yeah, lots to talk about, and we will get back into our kind of weekly, if not bi-weekly cadence of putting some episodes out. But thanks for listening. Please look out for us on the Reddit channel where we're going to do a few polls, and we'll speak to you all soon.